All right, so we're back again for another panel. We're going to talk about something that's very important. We're talking about business cases, the business case for automating with LSO. I mean, APIs are great and all these automation stuff is wonderful, but if you can't make a business case for it, then there's really no point. So joining me on this panel, I have, let's start with Divesh Gupta from Console Connect, who's VP of New Technology and Sales Operations. Divesh, would you join me on stage? All right, thanks Divesh. All right, thank you. And up next, we have the formerly missing Michael Kearns from Amartus, co-founder and chief strategy officer. Michael.
He's there.
He's there? Really? There he is, all right. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, thank you.
Excellent. Next up, we have Abi Sir from Salesforce, who's Senior Director of Product Management for the communication industry. Abi, will you join us on stage, please? And finally, you all know and love this guy, Ari Banerjee from Netcracker, SVP of Strategy. I think everyone knows Ari.
Hey, Ari.
All right, welcome, Ari. Take a seat.
Okay.
All right, we're here to talk about business case and LSO, right? I mean, after all, LSO is really cool, but you got to still make a business case for it, right? All right, we'll start with some of the key things about API. So historically, I would say many service providers originally implemented LSO APIs not because they really wanted to, not because they dreamed of doing it all their lives, but because some very large service providers said, you better do it, otherwise I'm not working with you, right? That's usually the case. Has this dynamic evolved, or how has it evolved, and what new business drivers are we seeing to motivate LSO adoption? I'll go to Michael because I know you deal with this day in, day out.
Yeah, so we're working with a large number of providers, enabling them with the MEF APIs over the last few years, and we have seen a change in that. Originally, as you say, it was motivated by a big buyer, which, hats off to that big buyer. They really established a great foundation, right. Critical mass of providers who have now automated with APIs. But what we're seeing now is those guys who've implemented the APIs already moving beyond that initial case. And it's driven by a number of factors, I guess. They've made the investment. And it works both on the buy and the sell side, actually. Also, we're seeing some very interesting scenarios. So they've made the investment and they say, okay, well, now we tell our other partners or buyers or customers that, we have a standardized API. This is the way we want to do business going forward. They've extended into additional products. So the original product was mostly around access line products. We have customers now who are using it for a broad range of products, Internet Access products, DWDM products, and all kinds of flavors of those as well, not just the standard flavors. And we're also seeing experimentation with things like edge compute and 5G access, Cloud Connect. If you go to one of our projects here, Hot Mongoose, which we're doing in conjunction with NTT, you'll get a good example of how the LSO APIs can be used for ordering all the piece parts of an end-to-end service like that. Last year we did a lot of work around looking at using alternative transit. So a provider wants to expand their network, can they use an alternative transit provider and then match that with last mile access. So there's a lot of things going on there in terms of how people are being creative about using their investment, even to the point where they're actually implementing buy-side portals, APIs, to allow those guys who are customers who are not really that motivated to implement the MEF APIs, but they're saying, we want you to be able to come in and buy from us because we need to be operationally efficient. We need you to standardize the way you come into us. So, standing up kind of portals initially to allow buy-side clients to come in and purchase services. I think some of the other stuff, I don't want to take too much time, but some of the other stuff I think is we've got this NetCo, ServCo split happening, okay? Right. So this is another initiative where people say, well, how are we going to operate that business? Right. And one way to do it is to have APIs between the ServCo, standard APIs between the ServCo and NetCo. Other areas would be you're looking at things like, you know, I'm an operating company with lots of different NatCos and OpCos, and how do I make this coordination? Because, you know, to the world, to the outside world, they maybe consider that we are operating as one company, not always happening, but, you know, so the APIs really streamline the processes across the engagement, make you look like one company in terms of how you deliver your products and services, you know.
Well, that makes sense. I think the API, you know, driven business, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I know we've seen this before. I mean, so the Bezos's API mandate within AWS, right, actually drove the way the company evolved, actually. And then what you're saying is, you got to implement some APIs anyway, right? So the first-class APIs between your different opcos, but those opcos may not be your opcos anymore, depending on how you disaggregate, right?
Yes, yeah.
And in delayer, and in the long term, you need APIs. So why not use something like the LSO APIs anyway, right?
Yeah, it's a very credible story for anybody who's done it. Like the standards are public, and you know.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, why not, right?
And the final thing I would say is NaaS is really starting to solidify. So you cannot have NaaS without having automation, and you can't have that automation really without standardizing your processes, because there's too many parties involved in the delivery of NaaS, basically. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. So you want to implement those APIs, you got to, you know, you want to do those standard APIs. But I saw, you know, Divesh, you were nodding a lot when Michael was talking, and you two have dealt with, you know, dealing with a lot of different partners, right, on your platform. And there are certainly challenges. You know, APIs aren't free. There is still work, right?
Yes.
So can you discuss maybe some of the challenges and the cost of partner onboarding, maybe without a standardized API?
Yeah.
And then how the LSO APIs, because we have to talk about LSO APIs on the title of the panel, how LSO APIs and tools like what you just announced and open source, right, the adapter, how can these things reduce the barrier to entry? Because that will improve the business case, right?
So let me just dwell into the rationale of doing the LSO APIs first. So, you know, Console Connect has a worldwide network with over 1,000 data centers, which we provide on-demand connectivity, layer 2, layer 3. All of the underlays are automated, and we're adding overlays on top of that also. Now, the biggest, I think, problem that we're seeing is, you know, rapid adoption is to connect with multiple partners, and the scalability issue that is eventually, you know, you hit into that.
Yep.
So if you're kind of working with proprietary APIs, there's only X number of partners that you could onboard, because every time it's a specific, you know, partner integration takes time and effort, both on the sell and the buy side. And so we had this problem, and we're kind of experiencing it firsthand. And you know, there were requirements of basically the scalability issue, and also partners out there who are wanting to connect to our platform, Console Connect automated platform. They're looking for more standardized open APIs to connect with us. So that was the requirement that fueled this development internally. And so what we've done is, instead of rewriting all of our APIs ground up, because, you know, it's a journey, it's been like 4 to 5 years where we have over the time added more functionality features onto our native APIs, but they're all proprietary APIs.
Right.
So instead of rewriting them, what we've done is we have created a wrapper around these APIs. And so what we call now the LSO API adapter, it sits in front of the native APIs, and it actually provides us standardized interfaces to partners who are wanting to connect and onboard to our network. So basically, it covers all the LSO use cases, starting from, you know, address validation, code, order, serviceability, and post-order inventory checks and all that. It covers Ethernet services to start with. And we've actually, what we thought is that instead of just using it in our own realm, we could open source it.
Sure.
And have the general MEF community or the ecosystem also adapt the same. So because I think there is a similar kind of a requirement coming from other NaaS operators in the federation out there who may have some level of automation. They have APIs which are proprietary, but with this open source, they would be able to kind of convert the proprietary APIs into a MEF standard one. It helps in basically lowering the entry barriers for newer operators to get there, download the tool, and then use it automatically. So we're kind of launching that during GNE.
Excellent, excellent. And I'll download it and see if you can adapt to my API. So we'll see. But anyhow, I mean, I think that's a good approach to it, to try to lower the barriers to entry, improve the business case. Now I'm going to ask a question, you know, sort of moving on to a slightly different place, but just as important, which is CRM, customer experience, right? I mean, again, we always talk about the network, but at the end of the day, we have actually real users, real customers, enterprises and end users. So from a CRM or customer experience perspective, how do you see service providers leveraging the LSO APIs to create, maybe more attractive product offerings or improve their customer satisfaction? Because at the end of the day, your NPS scores are important, right? Or at least we all think they are. Our bosses think they are. And what specific capabilities or features become possible with this kind of API automation? And that the question is sort of directed at you, Abi, because you're from Salesforce, right? So
sure,
you would know CRM.
First of all, thank you for having me here. Let me take a step back and kind of give something that which we are when we're dealing with APIs, we're dealing with quite a lot of different kinds of APIs. So I mean, we all know that the API economy is surging, right? So in a recent annual report from MuleSoft, which is published every year, which is the connectivity report, they said, and it's not surprising that almost all the enterprises whom they interviewed, about 99%, they have some APIs, some of the others, so which is not a surprise. However, only about 33% or very few of them have been able to make APIs as a lever for strategic lever or a driver for success, or haven't been able to monetize it. When we, from the communications industry, when we look at the different industry standards APIs, we think the MEF APIs are definitely a very strategic tool for CSPs, for service providers. And to your point, when you started this particular panel, preparing the business case.
Yes.
So yes, there are some service providers whom we say the business case is pretty simple. We are doing it because somebody asked us.
Exactly.
But we also meet with some CSPs who are kind of getting either from the buyer or the seller side, who are actually trying to build a business case and working with us, and then why should we do it? So they say that, okay, it's an industry standard API, it's worth investing. It's an API, these are APIs, we can develop them against multiple product payloads, which helps us. And we can deploy them in stages, and depending on what product we are going to deploy. But most importantly, what the thing is LSO APIs, they are actually a food, or they are actually for the future networks. They are actually feed into the future networks, which we all know that they are all going to be API driven, right? So now coming back to a question that what do we think from the CRM side. So I'll expand the scope of the CRM to CRM plus middle office. So when we talk about both the buyers and the sellers, the expectation from the CRM and the middle office is to focus on the business APIs, the business Sonata, LSO Sonata APIs, which is primarily the POQN and the ordering and the quoting process, right? So, and that's our focus, right? We are, even though we do understand that the operational APIs can give feedback which can be used to personalize the offers, so our primary focus is on that. But we also think that it's not just rolling out different APIs in a roadmap and just that's it, because that will not suffice. It's necessary but not sufficient. We think that these APIs have to do more, and how do we feed these APIs into the AI platform so that we can feed them in the AI, in the flow of work. So we all know, I mean, we had one panel and we're counting how many times we say Gen AI.
I was waiting for AI or Gen
right?
AI.
But
it was a matter of time.
But the point is that can we use, with Gen AI, let's say, with Gen AI, we now have the tools to uncover intelligence and insights from both structured and unstructured data. And how can we use these insights in harmony with the MEF APIs? Whether we use them to create the product payloads or the envelopes automatically, or the responses are coming in and we uncover the insights and then feed them back into the processes. So we are looking at it, so my short answer to your question is, yes, focus on the business APIs from the CRM middle office, plus use these APIs in the AI flow of work. That's our primary focus.
Yes, makes sense. And I knew that was coming up. There was no avoiding it.
It's a deal of the day.
Well, it is. I mean, we all live with it, right?
Yeah.
It's going to change our lives and it's going to rule us one day. Anyway, speaking of which, speaking of future services, as you talked about, as we move beyond, carry Ethernet, which we still talk about because here we are at the MEF, right? We have to talk about carry Ethernet, just like AI. New services like NaaS SD-WAN, SASE. So there are these upper layer services. I'm going to ask Ari, what opportunities do you see for service providers leveraging APIs like LSO APIs, for these services? And how can providers ensure they're well positioned to participate in this emerging, this emerging, supply chains, which presumably will give us better business and higher revenue, and help make the business case. So, what are you seeing, Ari, and in your work with service providers? How do these APIs or LSO APIs help them?
Thanks, great question, Roy. I think there are a few things happening, right? I mean, when we talk about commercialization of APIs and we talk about LSO APIs, that's the panel. The point is, it has to go beyond connectivity services. I mean, we know carrier Ethernet service, etc. We know that's where we are. Yeah. But you have to go to the higher value services for enterprise customer. That's given. Mm-hmm. Second, as we look into the market, and somebody talked about the infraco, the tech, servco, exactly. And all,
Michael was talking
new type of business models coming up, right? Plus, you have operators now working with enterprises, multi-vertical industries. Right. So how do you play that? Because it's all about non-connectivity revenues. And a lot of the chief digital officers, CMOs, etc., are being now judged on how much non-connectivity revenues are they bringing, and how are they working with other industry verticals. Right. So standardization, standards such as MEF with LSO and other standard bodies who are working, that's where the standard, makes a lot of difference. As an automation player, right, orchestration automation player, it helps us in a way, because you are now talking about not the lower level of integration, but you are talking about value-added services, right, which does mean that you are generating revenue, and then the CFO is happy, the projects get more funded, yes, and you are not wasting a lot of time on doing the lower level of integration effort, but you are doing it at a higher level. The other bit that we are seeing, and I'm sure we are all seeing this, is investment from Asian and Middle Eastern operators across the globe. So the European operator is running out of money, we know that, and we see Vodafone stake, E-End buying 14%, 14.4, going up to 25. We see Airtel investing in British Telecom. Yes. We see STC in Telefonica, and there's many, many examples of such. That means they want to become a global powerhouse, global connectivity player. But it's just not connectivity, it's just a way of trying to bridge the world. It's about value-added services on top of it. I'm just coming from the Middle East, from GITEX. The whole discussion was nothing to do with connectivity. Yeah. Nothing at all. It's about, we are launching infraco business. We have business around payments. Mm-hmm. We have business around gaming, and we are going to have a business around lifestyle. Yeah. Connectivity is part of all of these things. Yeah. But you guys figured out how we can make that work with our partners. Now, then goes back to the other question is, how do you automate your partners so that your onboarding time doesn't take 6 to 9 months? You do that quickly. But then the other goes back to when you're pushing in offers, your next best action, next best offer to your enterprise customer, how quickly can you do that, and how quickly can you use this integration to go to the right payloads, right? And then comes your analytics play and your multi-cloud AI and your multi-cloud strategy and so on and so forth. So discussions tends to veer completely away from how do I connect L1, L2 services, how do I do connectivity, but it's around value added. And I think to be successful, and I think LSO, MEF in the right track, this is where it needs to go.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And what you're saying is very compelling, given that the new sources of money that are coming into the carrier space come from places where historically they've actually proven that they are better at selling value-add services and services on top of that, and connectivity is just one element of that. Yeah. And the advantage, I think, is to all of us participating in the ecosystem, so to speak, is that if the R is higher, because you're not selling just pure connectivity, then the I can be higher too, which means that the providers can make more money. You can charge higher for those services that you're building out for them potentially, right? So I think that's helpful. So I think, in the last couple of minutes that we have here, there are still people out there that are trying to make the business case for LSO APIs, and they don't have a large carrier forcing them to do it. So what would each of you say to a service provider or a vendor, doesn't have to be a service provider, right, who's hesitating to invest in LSO APIs, right? what's the cost of waiting or not participating, and what advice would you give them about getting started? And you'll have 1 minute each. So I'm going to start with Divesh because you look really ready. Go, Divesh, go.
Yeah, so basically what I'm going to tell them is, first of all, the cost for not doing it is much greater than doing it. And we're lowering the cost of entry. So actually there is a pre-accelerator that we have started under MEF, which is called Clear Shadow. You could join that, join the MEF, the GitHub community, download the open source adapter that we have placed it out there already. And we'd like to basically engage them in a community where they can contribute back, report back if there are bugs, or maybe add to it. Like for example, the MEF LSO payload factory. You could add more payloads to it, so it becomes, the adapter becomes more universal for people to use it. And so I think that's a call for people to join the open source movement.
Excellent. You've lowered the costs, and they can join you, and you've lowered the cost even further, right? Yes. Making the business case. Yes. Michael, next.
Yeah, I think it's over the last 12 months, it's become more rare that you would hear somebody say, we don't need to do MEF, APIs, right? Okay, standard APIs. The issue is that they need to sell the proposition to their management and executives to invest in it. There are ways to get into the API game quickly for cost effectively. There's solution providers, there's open source, there's different ways you can try it. I think you need to look at some examples where it's working. We have a customer, SES, for example, who basically said, SES satellite company said, customer self-service is our thing. And they now have enterprise customers, they have wholesale customers, everybody's using the APIs, and performance management, trouble ticketing, all the ordering and product stuff. And look at an example like that and what it's enabling them to do. They have big customers who are mandating that, and large enterprises.
So the argument would be that, look, it's already working, for an NTN, not just a normal carrier. It works for a related business as well, and it's clearly working for them. Absolutely. It should work for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Abi.
So I would say something which you all know when you're starting is, don't go for the moonshot right away, right? So it's a crawl, walk, run approach, something that you can do fail fast. And leaning off what Ari said just now about what are the new services, what's the new kind of product and offerings that are out there. Oftentimes we kind of bog down to solve the problems of yesterday, and as we do that, we are not preparing ourselves for the future. So I often say, just go where the puck is, right? So and plan for that. So that would be my way of, or like our recommendation that we always say is, start small and then grow.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. Start small, grow, and go to the new services, which make a lot of sense with LSO API, and make sure you add AI.
Yeah.
All right, you have the last word, Ari. You better be good. You get
I got 2 minutes. I'm good.
You got 2 minutes.
On, yes.
Special.
Yeah. Thank you. So I think the most important thing is cross-industry collaboration. I think that's very important, and we don't talk about that enough because there are more than one standard bodies, right? MEF is doing a great job. They're making that happen. There's TM Forum. There's others, right?
That's right.
And you got to make sure that we don't duplicate efforts. Yeah. And that there's a complete alignment between the three different business, bodies. Really, at this point, it's GSMA and TM Forum and MEF, right?
Linux Foundation.
And sorry, I forget that. Yes.
Not that they're paying me, so just.
I'm sure. So how do you rationalize? How do you consolidate the effort, right? How do you make sure that you can show quantifiable benefits to the operator? So example, just to say that, hey, the cost of not doing that is a lot. And doing that, these are examples where people have helped. So for example, somebody talked about CES. You talked about we're doing this, for example, we are doing this for Viasat and Telesat. Yeah. Again, NTN providers who are adopting MEF APIs and providing the whole connectivity service across. There are operators as well. So quantifiable KPIs and benefits to show that, hey, operator business is not that different. A lot of stuff, there's commonality, and if you use that, this can happen. Plus also the bigger work, because how do you bring together all these different industry consortiums who at some point seems to be aligned, and in some cases it seems like there are duplications going on.
Yeah, fair. I think that's a very fair point, which is that, the MEF, again, back to what Frank was saying as he was actually sitting in this seat just a couple of minutes ago, saying that we do go father together, right? And it's not just the MEF or the people in the MEF, but I think the MEF has done a good job of reaching out to TM Forum, the GSMA, right, as well as the Linux Foundation, right? And so it's a much larger ecosystem, and they fit in the ecosystem too. So excellent. All right, well, thank you, gentlemen, for all your insights. And again, if you're not implementing your LSO APIs and you don't have a business case, hopefully after this panel you have one, or you can make one up. If not, you can always ask ChatGPT, as Frank did. So thank you.
Thank you very much.